The first question asks us to identify the dependent variable and then determine if we have a function, yes or no. So remember that the dependent variable is going to be our values of y. So if you look at this function, we see our values of y are 5, 6, -7, and 0. So we would write 5, 6, -7, and 0. Now, in terms of whether this is a function or not, we have to remember that a function is defined as every x value has only one y value. So we can see in this instance, we have this 8 and this 8. I have two 8s, which are both the x values, and each one of them have a different y value. So because of that, this is not a function. Number 3 shows a table of values of input and output values. We have -6, 8, -4, 5, -2, 2, and 0, 2. So we can see that the x values are the input and the y values are the output. Since we don't have any repeating values of x, we can say that that table is a function. Then we have a mapping diagram below it. So we have a domain of -8, 2, and 9. And then in our range, we have 7 and 13. Now, because each value of x points to only one value of y, we can say that this is a function. Because remember, x values can only point to one value in the range, but the range can have multiple values of x. So the domain of the mapping diagram would be the x values, which are -8, 2, and 9. And we said, yes, that is a function. The next question says, Number 5, find f of 5 when f of x equals -4x to the second minus 8x plus 6. So because we have f of 5, 5 is the value that's within the parentheses. So 5 is our value of x, or our input. Now it's asking us to find f of x. F of x is our output, or y value. So all we need to do is substitute 5 wherever we see x in the function. So f of 5 equals -4 times x squared, and x is 5, minus 8 times 5 plus 6. So if we simplify that, we get -4 times 25 minus 40 plus 6. -4 times 25 is -100. -100 minus 40 plus 6. -100 minus 40 is -140 plus 6. And that would equal -134. Okay, number 6, find f of -8 when f of x is equal to the absolute value of -4x minus 9. So remember that f of -8 is saying let's evaluate the function when x equals -8. So -8 is our x value, or the value of our input. We're solving for f of x, which is our y value. So what does y equal when x equals -8? Well, we can find that out by just substituting in our value of x. So the function f of -8 is equal to the absolute value of -4 times -8 minus 9. So that's going to be -4 times -8, which is positive 32, minus 9. So that would be 23. 32 minus 9 is 23. And the absolute value of 23 is 23. So my final answer is 23. Number 7 is a composite function. And a composite function is just a grouping of two or more functions. And the best way to describe it is these functions are nested within the other. So if we look at this first one, we have f of g of negative 3. So you can see that we have two sets of parentheses here. So what we want to do is look at that innermost set, which says g of negative 3. So g of negative 3 is going to be equal to x squared minus x minus 6. When we substitute in the negative 3 into that function, we have to remember when we substitute a negative, we have to surround it with parentheses. So we have negative 3 to the second power minus negative 3 minus 6. So if we simplify that, we get negative 3 to the second power, which is 9, minus a negative 3 is the same thing as plus 3 minus 6. So if we add that together, we get 9 plus 3 is 12 minus 6 would just be positive 6. So now we know that g of negative 3 equals x. So we're going to take that value of g of negative 3 of 6 and we're going to substitute that back into the composite function. So remember that our next function is f of g of negative 3. And remember, g of negative 3 is 6. That's what we just solved for. So now we're going to use 6 as our input, and we're going to evaluate for the function f, which is 7 times x minus 10 minus 4 times 1 minus x. So now we're going to take 6. 6 is going to be our input value. Okay, there's no negative, so we don't need parentheses. So f of negative 6 is going to equal 7 times 6 minus 10 minus 4 times the difference of 1 minus 6. So that's a positive 6. 7 times negative 4 minus 4 plus 24. Because we distributed the negative 4 to the 1, and that became negative 4, the negative 4 to the negative 6, and that became a positive. Now if we simplify that, we get negative 28 minus 4 plus 24. We can go ahead and simplify to positive 20. So we get an answer of negative 8. So the answer is f of g of negative 3 is equal to negative 8.